Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello everyone, this is C K Vishwakarma, your expert host from AllThingsConnected, founder and CEO based out of Singapore. So many of you have been part of this virtual thought leadership series in 2020, where we have hosted a number of discussions on different topics, different industries, different technologies. And here we are in 2021, still virtual, but we are going to start our second season, if I can call, and this is our first episode of this virtual thought leadership series, and we're going to start with smart cities and digital infrastructure. You will see a lot of such discussion in coming weeks and months, so watch out for those discussions. The topic for the discussion today is smart cities and digital infrastructure. Both are very wide topic, and smart cities has been discussed for many years, but the discussion is all about very broad thought leadership part of it. And to discuss the topic of today, we have three wonderful speakers from three different regions. We have Dr. Chen-Yu Lee. He is the director, Taipei Smart City Project Management Office. He is also Secretary General for GoSMART initiative. Then we have Randeep Sudan. He is founder and CEO of Multiverz, and he has been previously with World Bank advising governments globally on smart cities initiatives. And last but not the least, we have Jong-Sung Hwang. He's the master planner based out of Korea, and he's in the Korea's national pilot smart city in Busan initiative. This image which I'm presenting here, this was presented in a popular mechanics, which many of you might know is a very popular science magazine. And this image was published in 1928, the concept of a smart city. And some of you are already saying that is a very old picture, right? So why I'm sharing it here? Because this was the vision of a smart city which somebody was conceptualizing. But how does it make sense? So many of you, if you are familiar with smart city initiative in Singapore, so this particular image, if you see right side, uncanny similarity, which is a real plan from Ministry of Transportation Singapore, published like about roughly 2 years back. And if you try to look at the similarity here, and I help you here, you look at here, right? So if you look at the smart city underground, almost 90 years back, somebody conceptualized a tunnel trainway, right? So similarly, Singapore is conceptualizing MRT underground. Then we were conceptualizing motorways, right? So then where we have taxi network in the second level. Then we're talking about slow motor traffic, which is like buses or heavy vehicles. Then we have here, Singapore also have the same thing. And then obviously smart city is not built by technology, is built by citizens. So we do need to provide them more spaces to interact, to socialize. And this is where the top floor, if I can say, comes for the citizens to socialize themselves and do normal activities, right? So if you see, as I mentioned, the smart city is not just about the technology and tools. These are the enablers, and the vision can now be realized with the digital transformation technologies. And infrastructure is critical for that, right? So all these use cases, whether we see about public transportation, healthcare, education, remote work concept, which most of us are discussing about, online deliveries, those will be delivered and enabled by digital transformation technologies, be it IoT, 5G, AR, VR, and many more, right? But as I mentioned, smart city is not just about technology, but enabling and empowering citizens, the individuals, to be able to best leverage these technologies. So what we're going to discuss in session today is what we need to keep in mind in terms of digital transformation and digital infrastructure topics.
Thank you, CK, and good afternoon, probably good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Chen-Yu. I'm the director of Taipei Smart City Office, and as well as the Secretary General of the GoSMART. GoSMART is a international smart communities. But today I'm not. I will mention about much more about the GoSMART. I'm focusing on the Smart Taipei project. So as CK just mentioned, I think that the two major purpose for today's event is how exactly small city can make the I think there's two major purpose for the small cities. The first one is how exactly the private sector can be work with the public sector, or public sector can be work with the private sector. I think that's the first major issue that everyone need to figure out when they like to try to perform or try to excusing the small cities. And another issue is how to make everything sustainable. I think that's another very important issue when you want to, really understand and try to perform the real smart cities. Because as we know that the city always have very limits, the resolutions, especially for the budget. So yes, my name is Chen-Yu Lee. As I said, I'm the director and also work for the GoSMART and also for the staff Terrence. That's another campus about the staffs. So okay, so I think the first thing we need to figure out when we try to discussing about a smart city is what exactly is smart cities. Uh, in my office was started 5 years ago, and in very early beginning age of the, a period of the time, we try to figure out what exactly the definition of smart city in Taipei, because every city has their own situation, their definitions. So and for each city, they probably face this different problem. So the first thing we need to do is to define what exactly is the smart cities for your cities. So in Taipei, actually, we have three major purposes. The first one, of course, we want to make the city, the Taipei, can be more livable and also sustainable. That's the first thing we need to do. We need to improve every service we have and probably bring up some new services. But also we have other missions. Not the second one is we trying to, as probably that Taiwan has very mature ICT industry. So we try to, we think about if what we can do to to bring our industry to to grow, especially on the small city domain. And the third thing is we believe that it's very important to to share the experience and share the solution and share everything with other cities. It's good to connect with the people, with the cities. So to to make the Taipei become an international city is also a very important issue for the small city projects. And as I say, in very early 2 years, we spend lots of time to try to figure out what exactly the smart city is. You know, and I'm very agree with the CK. I'm not sure in other cities, but in Taipei, in Taiwan, the technology always not the issue for the smart cities. We have uh, more than 100,000 of the vendors who can provide all kind of the solution, all kind of technologies. So in most of the time, technology is not the problem. So what exactly the problem is? So actually, we try to divide the smart city into three different layers. The first one is, and then that's what we more focus on is we try to solve the problem that brought by the mega city urbanizations. So the first thing we need to do always to solve the problem. But if you want to solve problem, you need to figure out the real problem. So what exactly the real problem? Because lots of people actually they deal with the wrong problem. And for some of the case, they probably not trying to solving problem, but they can enable some things. probably can improve the efficiency. We can, making new services. That's the second layer. And for some of the thing we do, actually, we're trying to explore the future. For example, we do lots of experience about the autonomous bus. Um, Honestly, the autonomous bus right now, you can, we didn't expect, that the autonomous vehicle can fix lots of problem we have right now. But it's very important. We need to understand the future. So we have three different layers to define the small cities. But as I say, we're more focusing on what is that, what is the real problem of a small city, because it's the most important things. And we figure out the the real problem of smart Taipei, I mean the Taipei, is now we lack of the new smart solution. As I mentioned, we have lots of tons of solutions. The thing, the real problem we face is we don't have the innovation abilities. So what exactly the innovation abilities? So that's the major problem, the first problem we need to deal with. And I will give another example is, and also it's very important to figure out the real problem. We in the past 5 years, actually we do lots of projects to deal with all kind of problem, and we also uh, figure out that some of the case actually we deal with the wrong problem. For example, a couple of years ago, about three or 4 years ago, one of the a major issue is the mayor proposed one project called one student one tablet problem project, and we try to execute that project by brought everyone have a private tablet. And so if they don't have money, probably we can find some budget and make everyone have one tablet. But actually, that is not the core problem of this project. We figure out that the real problem is a digital uh, divide problem. That means if we try to make everyone has a private tablet, doesn't deal with this problem. So what we do is we need to more complete program, more complete how to say system, and include hardware, include software, and also include some mechanism. For example, actually in a real campus, it's terrible. It's disaster if you give a very little student, a very young student, have a private tablet, because they will occur more problem. So that's why we need to figure out the real problem. Back to the major problem we face is, as I say, we we figured that the first problem is that we don't have the ability to make anything innovative. So what should we do? So what we do in the past 4 years, first 4 years, we trying to build up a new mechanism, trying to make the city government can be able to accept new idea and new things, but it's very difficult. I think not only in Taipei, in most of the place, it's really difficult because according to the if according to the traditional structure of the government, if you spend any budget, anything from the government, that means you get result from that. So actually, that's why we cannot do much about the innovation, because that means most of the government system cannot accept value. That's very important. But if you want to deal with that, that means you need to deal with the budget problem and also deal with the lots of value tax problem and also make a new system that able to work with the private sector. That's very important. Okay, so I think I give you some, due to the time, I'll give you some of the result we have done in the past 4 years. So we try to make the, as I say, uh, we in the past 4 years actually we already initiate more than 200 projects that include all kind of projects. And as you can see the figure here, only about 32% of the project finished, and in this 32%, only 41% succeeds. That means more than 85% project value. That's the reality when you try to do something new. So if you spend budget and spend lots of effort on those projects, that means you have a big problem with your system and with your counselor. So that means we need to figure out a new system and a revised system to deal with that. So that's why my office will, establish, and we will do, we will do the extra job, and also we ask the poor, we call it the poor concept project. Cannot, it don't concern any of the budget. So it's more like a private-public partnership. That means the private sector, city government will work with the private sector and work with the project, and we will provide the necessary help. For example, we try to negotiate with the field, and we try them to promote, and we try to deal with the regulations, but we won't spend any budget on it until it succeeds, it works. And so that's why we have a three different stage. The first one we call it the proof of concept project, and this one is what I just mentioned. We call it a proof of concept stage. So that means in this stage we accept all kind of a concept. But if you want to go to the second phase that become the pilot project, then there must be a very very good result from the first stage, and probably go to the third stage that will become a scale up projects. And I think we already done very we have a very mature system running out for phase so deal with the first stage. But the common problem is, we only ask the private sector to propose their ideas, but in most of time, the private sector they propose all kind of the solution to the civil government, and most of the time they don't deal with the most emergency problem. So that's also another problem. So that's why we need to keep revise our system. So we also propose a new, we call it the 1+7 framework. That means we not only accept the proposed from the private sector, we also ask the agency department to to write down their needs, and we also call for the solutions. So it's a magnet to helping both the civil government can be able to announce their needs, and also for the private sector they also can propose their solution and their idea. So we're still working on the second phase right now. That's the eight group we just established last year. So we are already issue more than 40 different needs from not only eight group of the department. Okay, so now due to the time, I will give you some other example what we have done, and also I will mention about some of the how to say it, some of the making some of the project, how exactly we can make it sustainable. As I say, you cannot always depend on the government budget. So what exactly we can do to make all the service can be able to sustainable. And I just show we could get lots of award and recognition from the past, not only the project and also for the whole system in England. And we rise the ranking from no one knows about Taipei and to yeah, probably very good result for us. And I was in a I think I have about uh, probably 5 minutes. I'll give you some of the example. We have lots of examples, so please find our example on our website. So I will just give you some of the very classical example. The first one I'm talking about the transportation here. As you can see, this case we show how exactly we can helping the private sector to establish their business and also that benefit to city government. In Taipei, we encourage that the private sector to propose their sharing transportations, and what we do is we not consider them as the public transportation. We only in Taipei the public transportation include the biking. Yes, biking is, and also the metro and also the bus. But for the vehicle sharing, I mean the motorcycle, car sharing, and even the parking sharing is not the major public transportations. So that means we don't spend budget on that. But we're having to, do their business. We're having to promote and we're having to deal with the regulations. For example, the motor sharing that was starting in 4 years ago, we having to deal with the legal problem because our regulation didn't allow them to do business on the parking slot. That's a serious problem. So we're having to deal with that, and we're having to promote that, and we have and now we already have 3 vendors and more than 9,000 scooters running in Taipei right now. But that's very important because they can figure out their own business model. So we don't need to pay them anything. So that's very important. So that's why we still have very tiny vehicle sharing, because for the vehicle sharing vendor, they cannot figure out their business model. I think that's the whole idea of this, sharing transportation. We don't need every sharing transportation work in Taipei. No, we don't, because we more focus on public transportation and we just help them to do their business in Taipei. So that make everything sustainable. And also, we do lots of tests about autonomous bus parking. Of course, we do lots about traffic, and also do lots of AI image recognitions. And we work, as I say, we work the private sector, and we see how the result is, and if the result deal with our problem, and we will make it become a pilot or probably scale up.
Very impressive presentation. Thank you so much for sharing the interesting works and the projects which your team in Taiwan is pursuing. So thank you, Dr. Chen-Yu. I'm going to send you back to the audience and invite our next speaker on the stage is Randeep Sudan. So stage is yours. I'll take a leave from the stage. See you shortly.
So thank you very much, CK. And the previous speaker, Chen-Yu, his presentation was excellent and extremely impressive what work is being done in Taipei. So when I was thinking about this topic of smart cities and digital infrastructure, I was trying to see what exactly we should be looking at when we think about digital infrastructure in the context of smart cities. Now, when we talk about digital infrastructure, everybody knows the importance of broadband connectivity, Internet of Things, cloud storage, cybersecurity, and other elements of digital infrastructure. So often technology is not the problem, and this is a point which was also emphasized by Mr. Chen-Yu. The definition of smart cities, we have a wide range of definitions, literally hundreds of definitions. In fact, the ITU came up with its definition of smart city after considering 100 other definitions. So there are lots of definitions out there. And these definitions, some of them include stuff like smart grids for energy, that smart energy, smart utilities, smart mobility, smart citizens, and there are a whole lot of things which get included when we are talking about digital infrastructure in the context of smart cities. And there is uh, literally, it is very difficult to decide what exactly are the most important applications which would determine a city to be smart, and how do you prioritize them. So the basic problem that we are trying to solve here is actually making cities more livable or more sustainable, or improving the well-being of residents and making the lives of residents better. So that's the end objective. And technology and digital infrastructure and the smart in smart cities is only to achieve this objective for making cities better for their citizens. But when we look at smart cities, we find that there are quite a few challenges which we need to address. Now, what is happening is that new technologies are coming every day, right? So already there are some technologies which have been implemented in a city, and then you have something brand new, which was not there earlier, and then there's a temptation that why don't we pilot or test or deploy this brand new technology on top of the technologies which are already existing in those cities. And this often leads to the problem of compatibility, because you have legacy infrastructure and solutions, and some of these legacy infrastructure and solutions are actually digital. And then you have this brand new stuff which is coming along, which needs to be superimposed or substituted for what is legacy. Another problem in smart city context is that technologies tend to get introduced in silos. So say if the transportation folks in the city are looking at transportation, they may introduce some technologies which are relevant to transportation. Then there are the utility folks who are trying to introduce IoT for their utility infrastructure. And then there are schools which are trying to introduce smart technologies in schools. And there are any number of organizational silos which are bringing in new technologies, and these silos often do not talk to each other, which is also a problem. There is also no clear-cut methodology to prioritize technology investments. So if you have 50 options in front of you as a city administrator or as a CIO of a city, what really do you choose? What is your mechanism to prioritize those technologies? And how do you deal with that? So that is again a matter of complexity, which is not easy to solve. And then there is this problem of an increasing digital divide, because not everybody has access to the same quality of devices or the same sort of capability in terms of even digital literacy. So how do you manage the residents in a city who are at different points in terms of their digital capabilities and in terms of access to digital devices and digital means? So these are some of the problems which obviously city planners, city information technology officers, and people who are in charge of digital technologies are trying to grapple with. And then there is another problem, which is that cities often are looking at best practice. So we look across the world, we say, okay, Singapore is doing this, Sweden is doing this 1-minute city, Paris is doing this 15-minute city, and there is this thing happening in Taipei or happening in Busan, or the leading cities which are doing a lot of interesting and innovative work. So the tendency is to look at these cities and try and see what is the best practice that we can absorb in our city and follow. I am of the opinion that best practice, has value, certainly, because we should learn from everybody, but it also has its pitfalls. Because as soon as you start following a best practice, it takes some time to internalize that best practice, to adapt it and implement it. Now, by the time you understand, adapt, and implement, that best practice has already moved on, it is on a new frontier, and you are again a laggard because of the fact that it takes time to go from point A to point B in terms of best practice. So that is also a problem which many cities are encountering. So I feel that we should systematically look at these questions when we are thinking of what digital infrastructure should we focus on to really make cities smart. Of course, there are certain elements of digital infrastructure which are absolutely foundational. You cannot do without broadband infrastructure if you are trying to introduce digital technologies and make a city smart. Absolutely, you can't avoid it. Maybe there's a way of avoiding it in the sense that now you have these low Earth orbiting satellites, which might provide you with some connectivity very quickly and at price points which would have not been possible in the past. But nonetheless, you do need broadband infrastructure to be able to use the smart in smart cities. You also need the hybrid infrastructure because we are having this mega trend of digital twins. So this is essentially that every person, place, object, and process is getting digitized at different speeds, but that trend is very much which is going on. And this is resulting in hybridization of infrastructure because digital technologies are now getting embedded and getting attached to analog infrastructure to improve efficiencies or to make things better. So certainly broadband, absolutely this mega trend of digital twins. And then a foundational element again is data, because digitization means nothing without data. So how do you ensure that you have the wherewithal to be able to capture data and analyze it? So this is just to sort of lay the context of using digital infrastructure in a smart city context. Now, what I would like to propose or to suggest, or at least to make you consider, is that when we are trying to look at smart cities, we should not be starting with technology. Even though there are foundational elements which I just discussed, what we should be starting with is a strategic vision of the future. Now, what happens is that most cities and most countries in the world do not lay enough emphasis on strategic foresight or strategic futures. Why is it that cities like Singapore always seem to be ahead of the game? After all, there are other people who are very capable in other parts of the world. But why is it that certain cities and certain countries are always way ahead of others? Now, when I was posted to Singapore from the World Bank, I was really interested in finding out what is it that makes Singapore tick. And one thing that I discovered was that they have something called a strategic futures capability in the Prime Minister's office. They have set up a Center for Strategic Futures in the Prime Minister's office. This is a very small outfit. It is just about 9 or 10 people. But it is plugged in to the entire planning and budgeting process of Singapore, number one. Number two, what this Center for Strategic Futures does is that it has systematically trained the entire civil service of Singapore on a program called Future Craft. So you meet any senior official from Singapore, they are fully versed in the methodologies and the approaches to systematically think about the future in a disciplined way. Initially, when Singapore started, systematically thinking about the future in 2012, they were doing these exercises every 2 years. So, which means that you look at the future, you try and identify what are the signals which you can pick up, what are the foundational shifts that are taking place in economy, in society, in technologies, and then based on those shifts, you decide what are the risks and opportunities that you should be addressing, and you prioritize, and there's a method of doing that, and you are plugged into the future. But now, Singapore does that exercise not every 2 years. It does this exercise every 3 months. It has established something called a risk assessment and horizon scanning capability within the Center for Strategic Futures, which ingests a lot of data, is able to analyze that data, mix it with human intelligence, and be able to see what exactly are the opportunities and risks out there on the horizon, and systematically plan for those risks and those opportunities. It is this capability which results in Singapore being generally ahead of the game in many respects. So, if you look at, for example, autonomous vehicles, it was one of the first countries or cities in the world to actually manage to relocate a company to Singapore. It introduced a taxi service in One North, which is one part of Singapore, and a public transportation system which is looking at autonomous transportation. Also developed the framework, the standards. So they are definitely ahead. For example, on this whole piece on autonomous mobility as compared to other countries and other cities. So I would suggest that a city should first start with a capability which is future oriented, which allows decision makers to think long term, which monitors what are the shifts that are taking place and what might be the risks and opportunities, and then be able to prioritize those opportunities and then act upon them. Because if you have that capability, then you need not follow just the best practice. You actually are developing a capability for next practice, because you're looking way ahead and you are planning ahead of time and doing that in a systematic and in a very disciplined way. And this capability, just like Singapore has embedded this in its civil service, needs to be embedded at every decision making level within the city. So that's one element of infrastructure or human infrastructure which I would like to emphasize. The second piece that I would like to emphasize is on digital twins. The reason I would like to emphasize this is that a city will be successful only if its citizens are successful. For citizens to be successful, you need to have highly capable people, and you need to be able to build their capabilities in terms of skilling, reskilling, upskilling. In fact, Accenture, it filed a patent in the year 2016, and they filed subsequent patents till 2018. So 4 patents were filed by Accenture on a liquid workforce platform. Now, these patents were filed in Germany, in the US, and in Australia. Now, basically, what this liquid workforce platform is that it understands what are the existing skills of workers in a given organization. It looks at other organizations which are similar or adjacent to this outside, what are the skills those guys are hiring. It looks at where the future is heading and identifies the skill gaps as part of a platform, and then would provide guidance and would help this workforce to be more skilled and more adept at dealing with things which are emerging. Now, I feel that cities should actually help their residents big time on becoming liquid in a job market. So there should be a possibility that we can rapidly reconfigure skills. We can ensure that people can be transferred from one job to another job in a manner which is fast, which is quick. The way to do this is to ensure that we have digital twins as part of a city or a national strategy. Because I'll give you an example from Walmart. Walmart used to take about 8 hours to train their workers for a Black Friday, part of the work where people return their goods and you have to accept what are being returned by customers. That function used to take 8 hours of training. Whereas using virtual reality and immersive technologies, Walmart is able to do that in 15 minutes. And the guys who are trained for 15 minutes are doing better than the people who were trained for 8 hours. Now, just imagine that there's a taxi driver who becomes unemployed because of autonomous mobility, autonomous vehicles. Maybe there's a way to, deploy this person on a substation. And I'm just making this up, maybe there might be an opportunity in a substation. Now, for a driver to certainly start maintaining an electric substation, today is not possible. It's a stretch. You have to undergo training and you have to be very capable. But just imagine that if you have a digital twin of that substation and you're using augmented reality, using virtual reality for training, actually when this driver goes to a substation, he can be guided by an expert engineer and by augmented reality to perform a task which otherwise would not be possible. When I was in Singapore, I visited the Accenture, Center of Excellence and Innovation, and there they showed me an oil rig. Now, I am an economist by training. I'm not an engineer. So they said, can you locate what is the problem in this oil rig and can you fix it? And when you wear those augmented reality glasses, you can know which part actually requires attention. It tells you what tool to use, how to use it, and actually guide you to replacing that part. So suddenly, completely as a layman, I am capable of doing something which otherwise would not have been possible. So I feel that a digital twinning program which is systematically thought through would not only create jobs, but it would create the capabilities in a smart city to behave and to be prepared differently. I also have been propagating this idea of cyber risk insurance. Now, this is very briefly an idea that if you ask government agencies and also the private sector to look at cyber risk insurance, they will have to take an inventory of their data, of their digital assets, and they will have to give a monetary value to that. That itself, the discovery of what digital assets are there, what data is there, what is the monetary value, can help you to prioritize, plan, and implement in a way which is can be very powerful. So I think I will stop here because my time is up. But these are some of the ideas that I wanted to share with you. Even though we look at digital infrastructure for smart cities, I think we need to look at it from a different perspective, a different angle, to be able to really make a difference to the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randeep. Wonderful insights and a lot of those which you mentioned about, especially to Singapore, myself being in Singapore for almost 18 years and I've seen the transformation. And we'll come back to you again in the panel discussion to pick some of further deeper in some of the topics, your brain. So in the interest of time, Jong-Sung. Yep, we can hear you. And if you could share the presentation, then we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share Korean cases with my thought with you. And today's topic is digital digital infrastructure. I wrongly write data infrastructure, but same. I talk about both data and digital infrastructure together. So first, because I'd like to start with the understanding of smart cities. So because the definition is very important. Depending on what definition you use, so the approach will be different. So in Korean experience, we have experienced the three kinds of understanding. The first one is understand the smart city as advanced city or a higher level of urban development. Second type of understanding is regard the smart city as a city where use ICT or other technologies intensively. And the final and the recent trend is to understand smart city as a kind of digital transformation of city or a new way of urban development. So Korea has experienced all three perspectives. So when we started UCT, which stands for Ubiquitous City, in 2003, when we started the UCT, we understand the smart city as an advanced city. So we try to design and build a very state of the art city. So still some group of people still, and some ministry still stick to this kind of understanding. But the problem is that this kind of understanding regard the smart city as a product. Also, it is based on a linear model. So that means that so underdeveloped country or underdeveloped cities, it might be very hard to do smart city from based if we accept this understanding. The second one is very popular. Just to understand smart city from technology side, but this definition is hard to differentiate the smart city from other types of cities. So I and the Korea government's official to understand smart city as digital transformation, but still many in Korea, many sector and many ministries still stick to previous two perspective. So smart city as a digital transformation, we can based on such a perspective, we can expect big changes like this. So from hardware driven to software or data driven, horizon to city, and often ecosystem and something like that. But the biggest change will take place in urban structure. So especially in terms of infrastructure, the role of infrastructure. So in existing so there's no separation between city platform and urban solutions. So I mean, each urban solution development to develop their own except so how to say broadband and Wi-Fi and mobile. So at the time, the city provides some basic urban platform, including GPS, Wi-Fi, broadband, and mobile, and including 5G. But except that, other infrastructure or platform should be prepared by service developer. But in smart city, as an innovation type of from an innovation driven perspective, then we need to separate from solutions. So the role of city is to develop a common platform for various smart services, and each sector, each domain, or each company can focus their invest into the solution development. So from this kind of understanding, the Korea government started Smart City Data Hub 2018. So the cities, Siheung and Daegu, the Korean cities, we selected two pilot cities, and in two cities, the Korea government developed a standard smart city data hub, which can connect different kind of government systems, and which can collect data from various different sources. So this system was used when we developed a COVID-19 patient tracking service, tracking system. That system was developed on the basis of this data hub. So the time to develop the system was very short, less than 2 weeks. But the smart city data hub is not the final one we want to develop. So this slide summarizes different types of smart city platforms. So I think all of us, or anyone at this forum may be very familiar with. But I'd like to ask you that: did you see smart city platform? Yeah, some might say yes, but some might say no. But yeah, I think both answers are true. So it depends on what kind of platforms do you find. So there are 4 types of so based on open distinction on the one hand, and also system specific words and the system agnostic distinction on the other hand. So system specific means that each applications need to develop in order to applications onto a specific platform. System agnostic is actually so they don't need to redevelop their applications to load their applications on a platform. So there are 4 types of there might be 4 types of smart city platforms. So but the problem with the smart city data hub system, which I mentioned earlier, is that it is closed on one hand, and also it is system specific. That means that so government application to be redeveloped to operate onto these platforms. So what we need to do is to make ensure platform interoperability between so many platforms that are operating in our city. So there are so many platforms in transportation, in energy sector, in security, and digital twin too. That there are many platforms. So the final form of smart city platform should be something should be system agnostic on the one hand, and should be open to the third party. So in order to try this open and or into platforms, so the Korea government started a national pilot smart city project in 2018. So the government designated 2 national pilot cities, one in Sejong, which is new administration capital of Korea. The second is in Busan, the second largest city and the largest harbor city in Korea. So this slide shows where it is and the how big it is. So I can skip this. So the vision of national pilot Busan. So the visions are different between Sejong and Busan pilot cities, but the city set its vision as augmented city. So augmented city means that augmented city means a new kind of smart city that help citizens to increase their capability. So it is different from other or previous smart cities. So smart cities have helped city to operate better. Smart cities help in city operation and efficiency. But it's time for smart city to help each individual citizen to improve their enhance their capability. So augmented city can be used in many different ways, but the two case is cognitive augmentation and physical augmentation. So as Randeep explained in the previous presentation, so cities, smart city can augment each citizens, so how to say, augment capability or also logical capability. Already we use car navigation, and car navigation improves cognitive capability a lot. And also robotics technology can augment citizens' physical capability. So Busan Pilot City's vision is to be the world's first augmented city. So it is going to use very intensively robotics technology to augment citizens' physical capability, and also AR and VR is another target technology for cognitive augmentation. So we set up 4 strategies to realize augmented city vision, and also in order to realize some new platform, to develop new smart city platforms. So the first one is platform interoperability. So instead of developing one common platform, so as far as I know, there are still many aims at developing one single unified platform for smart cities, but I think it is not possible to cover all domains of city with one single platform. So instead of develop one single common platform, our approach is to platform strategies. So develop meta platform that can bridge different platforms, then so allow platforms, it will help platforms to communicate and work. The second strategy is to develop a new data architecture. On we need to standard. So far our approach to connect data is based on systems. So we connect system to system directly, but when the number of system increases so large, then such approach is not possible. So we are going to based connectivity approach on the supply side, and the demand side, because it is the AI era, so we will apply algorithm-based customization. But in this case, more important is that to make balance between privacy protection and implementation. So I'm not sure this is the proper expression, data representation is proper or not, but so data should be represented in a balanced way. They can cover all cases in a city. So new data architecture is the second our key area. The third area, as Randeep explained, is about digital. In the smart city digital twin should be different from other cases. So originally, digital twin or CPS is based on closed system. Those systems are built up closed system, but smart city is not a closed system, it is open system. So we made a new word it is CPS, but we replace S to system with society. So in our concept, the CPS means a cyber-physical society rather than cyber-physical system. So instead, so our focus goes to platform design rather than data creation or data building. And finally, our final strategy is robot-friendly, is to build a robot-friendly city. So we are going to, so many cities will use robotics technology widely soon. It is our our forecast. So our main target is not the development of robot. Our target is to make a city friendly for so, for instance, elevator is very so to say top priority project. So, instead of developing elevator, developing a robot that can control elevator. So we will develop elevator that communicate with robots. So now screen. So for this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jong-Sung. A very interesting presentation and a lot of insights as usual. So I'm going to invite other two panelists also on the stage so that we can now get into the panel discussion. And while I was listening to all three of you, and I had my own question, but apparently I doubt whether I'll be able to get time to ask my own questions. So what I'm going to do is basically have the questions from the participants. Let's go through some of them. So just one more time, and we have still 60 participants listening to us. So thanks to all of you for staying with us. Just a few reminders. As I mentioned that we have a lot of interesting questions in the question tab already. So if you'd like to help me to prioritize some of the questions, please do help with upvote. If you still have some time and if you want to ask those questions with audio video enabled, what you have to do is raise a hand and then enable your camera and microphone. But again, we'll try to do that if we have time. So in no particular order, I'm taking this number of votes as a cue in terms of order of asking the question. So as panelists, you can also see some of the questions. So one of the questions which we have from Gopi Baba, he is enterprise architect at Daimler Mobility. He's asking, how do you develop a data culture and a government structure around data? Right. So while it's not particularly pointed to any particular individual, maybe I will request, in this case, maybe Randeep to throw some insights about the data culture, because you talked about the human capabilities as one of the topics. So how do we build up this culture of data in the organization?
So thank you for that. That's a very important question. So I will take you back to my experience when I used to be working in the state of Andhra Pradesh in India. And that was mid-90s and early 2000. So we had a chief minister, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, who was very digitally savvy. And the state at that time, it was not IT savvy at all. In fact, if you ask an officer, PCs were police constables, and they were not even aware about how to use basic IT. So what happened is that the chief minister, he started ensuring that every department, it presents to him and it engages with him only with data. So you come to a chief minister's meeting, you have to make a presentation. So I remember asking the police officers that, do you have PowerPoint? Because the chief minister will insist on your making a PowerPoint presentation. And this is mid-90s, right? So they said, PowerPoint, we have actually 3 on the wall, but except for that, we don't have many. So PowerPoint was the electric socket for them, right? So that was the stage from which we started moving. And because of this systematic drive to see that data is computerized, every single electric transformer in the state was computerized. Even the vehicles, the roads were computerized in the sense that data was acquired on the condition of the roads. And then in a meeting with engineers, they were asked that why is it that certain roads are bad when there are certain engineers and certain contractors are working on those roads, when it is the same program, same road, and just when the jurisdiction changes, the quality of the road changes. How is that happening? Now, systematically, one by one, everybody realized that data is really important, and they started digitizing their stuff and building a data culture. So a short answer to this question is that the data culture has to start from the top, and it has to be embedded in every process of decision making, review, and engagement. Only then you can build a broader culture. That's one. And secondly, when you are able to provide some benefits to people using the data, I think that also helps in making the culture better.
Right. And maybe, I don't know, Chen, you would like to add a couple of lines on the same topic? How did you
Yes.
enable this data culture in Taiwan?
Actually, in Taiwan, we have very strict privacy regulations, and so basically, before we do any projects, we will try to, try to make sure that we don't have any privacy problem with the data and also the people. And also, we have a whole department called in city government. We have a department of IT. They take care about the security problem. I mean, the cybersecurity problem. So basically, in Taipei, a lot of things we cannot do. For example, we cannot do the facial recognition in a solution in Taipei. So we don't recognize people's face and who is he. So what we do is we just collect some of the not relevant data from the people, or unidentifiable data. So basically, we have a very basic privacy rule that we need to follow. So that's what exactly we do in Taiwan, in Taipei.
Sure. And maybe as a next question, I'll come to you, Jong-Sung. And there's a question here from David Go. He's a managing director at PTV Group. He's asking, digital twin are great. We all of us spoke about it, but we also know there's a high cost of not only just the platform, but also the content creation part of it, and then the deployment, and then maintaining for the relevancy and so how would you justify the digital twin concept? Because right now the organization is struggling even in the small concept within a building or even a plant, and we are talking here about smart city. So maybe I'll go to you, Jong-Sung, first. What is your thoughts about it on digital twin investment?
Yes, so we need to distinguish between digital twin as a product and digital twin as a platform. So actually, we use this distinction for smart cities, a smart city as a product, as a smart city as a platform. But digital twin as a product, so it means that someone built a digital twin as a finalized product. Then after that, maintenance will be done to update the data quickly. But such approach is not possible in open system. So it is possible in closed system. So in open system like smart cities, so platform-based approach is needed. So it is our plan, but not implemented yet. It's not implemented yet. It's our plan to make a long-term plan, and then develop common technical and data platform which will so collect and manage all kinds of data from different sources, and then legally we will designate the person who are the agency responsible for some data. But it will take time to expand the scope of application. So in the first place, we will just designate only a couple of buildings or places. So then need a very strong public management. But as time goes on, we can enlarge the scope, and then maybe it is our just private guess, so personal guess. It will take more than 20 years to cover the whole city, but such a platform-based approach is, we think, sustainable. And then it is cost effective too. Okay.
Right. If I can just add quick my thoughts here also, and if I wear my hat as engineer while I work with the CXOs as well. So typically when I look at digital twin, is primarily I look at 3 stages. One is the simulation part of it, that can we create a platform to simulate and predict what could possibly happen. Then comes the monitoring part of it, and then comes the control part. So is in the hierarchy of complexity. So obviously digital twin at the city level, and some of you might be familiar with the virtual Singapore project in Singapore, which itself is a huge task to do with it, which is primarily a simulation as of now. So I think if I think of it from a digital twin perspective, I'll break it down into more specific use cases and then try to justify the investment on those. And then for the next question, I'll come back to you, Randeep. While this vary from region to region and country to country, but what do you see some of the key problems? Is it about funding? Because obviously the technology and solutions does require somebody to spend money, somebody to sign a check, or it is about bureaucracy, the culture, or literacy, like people are not aware about cybersecurity, privacy, or data science topics. So if you have to pick up, or maybe you could also have to narrow down in this regional context, maybe, because again, if you think of US versus Europe versus Asia, so what do you see mostly in this region?
Right. So I think that also I would just like to briefly comment on this digital twin part, CK. I feel, for example, I'll give an example on this digital twinning thing, which is Singapore insists for getting a building permission, you need to submit a BIM, right? Now, otherwise you don't get a building permission. Now, that does not involve any cost on the part of the government except to process that, whereas you are encouraging the private sector to be able to provide building design, which is much better quality, and it might help you in firefighting when it comes to it. So there are so many benefits, and it is not so expensive, number one. Number two, when you go to virtual Singapore, it costs $95 million with Dassault systems, which is very sophisticated. But today you have developing countries. I was working in a municipality, Darsi in Andhra Pradesh. They are flying drones at minimal cost and doing a virtual Darsi, which may not be as sophisticated as what Singapore has, but it's a solution, right? It takes it forward. I know of garment workers who are digitizing garments and selling it, as a digital garment for gaming. Now that's not so expensive. It's a digital twin, certainly, but it is not so expensive. So this whole idea that digital twins can be very expensive, I feel there are ways around it, and there is a technique of doing this. That's one. This partly also answers your next question. Whether it is money or there is capability is a problem, or policy is a problem. So I feel that if one can be very creative, and I really like the way Chen-Yu approached it. When he was starting his presentation, his first point was involving private sector. He found solutions where government did not have to spend anything. They got the private sector to, do stuff. I feel that's the way to go. So in my view, the basic problem is a mindset problem. It is not money. It is not capacity.
Yeah.
It is a problem of mindset.
Sure. And I'll come to you, Chen-Yu, as a next question. You
Yeah,
also touched upon the cybersecurity.
yeah.
Right? So when you're looking at many of such initiative, which does involve government as well as private agencies,
Mm-hmm.
could be small, could be big, could be startup, could be scale up.
Yeah, yeah.
So what is your typical approach of dealing with data security? Is there any some framework which you, as a Taiwan Smart Nation initiative, has come together, or are there certain global standards which you are kind of modifying it into the local needs?
Okay. Actually, our privacy, just follow the GPDR, so it's very quite simple. But actually, I do like to comment with the previous question, especially for the digital twins and also the key challenges. Yeah, I think that the data privacy in Taiwan, I mean data privacy in every country is quite different. For example, in Europe, it's very, as I say, it's very it's restrict, more like a restrict. It's strict, but more almost restrict. But in Taiwan, we have very similar situation with Europe. So because we follow the GDPR, so basically we cannot do anything to identify our citizens. So that makes the digital twins very interesting because in Taipei, we're talking about a digital twin. We just trying to try to collect all the data, but not from the people. We try to collect data from all kind of sensors. But the problem is, we already have lots of IOC in different agencies. For example, we have a traffic IOC. It collect all kind of the signal from the road, from the intersection and anywhere. And we already have, a very big IOC for the police department. They collect all kind of the civilian cameras data. So what exactly we need for the city level IOC, or call it the digital twin? So basically, it, the first thing we need to figure out is what exactly we want to do by using those data, because it collect lots of data. You can, it store them, it spend lots of money store the in a huge amount of data, and it's meaningless because you don't know what to do. Because you know, in our original design, every agency already done their part. So that's how we think about the digital twin. So that's basically what we treat about the digital twin. So in Taipei, we're not talking too much about a digital twin. We will call it a city level IOC, and we need to figure out some of the scenario that the mayor can use, because the city level IOC trying to provide service to, at least to provide a service to the mayor. We don't, so we're still working on it. We trying to figure out more scenario we can, and we will start to collect data, because it's meaningless if you don't know what to do with the data. So that's why we're thinking about the digital twins. And I think that the major challenge for the small cities, for every city is different. It's quite different. But in Taiwan, in Taipei, the first thing yeah, Randy is right. Taipei is the most rich city in Taiwan, but we still have very limited budgets. That's the reality. So you cannot expect to spend all the money to deal with every solution we get, to purchase anything you want. It's impossible. So budget is a problem, but it's always not the major problem, because everyone faces the same problem. So it's not a problem. So as I in Taipei, our major problem is the mindset. Yes, exactly, the mindset. You know, the reason we're trying to revise our system is because we figure out why the private sector, the private servant, they why they act like that, because there was they were controlled by the system. So the system told them to do that. So not the one, because they are smart. They are very smart guys. So the system, the framework, it's just like that. So they need to fit into the frameworks that makes they work like that. So what we do is basically we need to change the system, change the framework. For example, we need to protect the public servant to do innovation. That's very important. When they face a failure, that means they probably go to jail if they spend any penny of government money. So that's what we do. So I think that the major problem is to deal with the system, to revise the system,
I
not but
agree.
not technology. At least in Taipei, yeah.
Yeah. And it makes very much sense. As you said, the funding, I think, is a problem for everybody. So there have to be some creative ideas and solutions that how do we bring together the private
And
organization to
and
connect
if you
this up.
have any problem of the technology, just talk to me. It's no problem in Taiwan, so I can introduce lots of solutions.
Certainly. Just a quick time check with all three of you. Is it okay to extend like a couple of more minutes to pick up the questions, or you have to rush? Any of you? Can we extend 5 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sure.
I'm fine.
So, I mean, there are a lot of interesting questions, and I wanted to cover as much as relevant one possible. But those who we can't answer, so do not mind, we'll take it up maybe in the next time. And some of the topic like cybersecurity, we are going to have a dedicated section, so look out for that. And one of the questions which I'm going to pick up now from Dr. Jayantika Soni. She's the co-founder and CTO for Racing, is a startup in Singapore. And this particular topic of sustainability, which I am also actively working with a couple of organizations. So the question is, what are the metrics you would use for judging sustainability nature of a smart city? It's a very broad
Okay.
topic. And if you
Okay.
look at GRI or you look at UNGC, and there are many more such frameworks. So any key pointers what the smart city should look at when defining sustainability initiatives?
Yeah.
Anybody? I'm sure maybe who should we go with? Jong-Sung, maybe let's go with Jong-Sung first.
Okay. Johnson, please.
You have to unmute yourself, Jong-Sung. Okay, so I think let's go with you, Randeep. Any thoughts on
Yes,
sustainability?
so sustainability is a very wide topic, right? You have the SDGs of the United Nations, the Sustainability Development Goals, and you have 17 goals and so many, metrics for measurement. So many cities, adopt that in terms of metrics because it's an internationally agreed set of parameters and indicators. But there might be certain cities which are more focused, for example, on emissions of carbon dioxide. Like I know, for example, the Rotterdam port industrial cluster is seriously doing wind energy, a project called Wind Master, where they are trying to cut down CO2 emissions by 40%, and that's their single metric, which is the most important metric which they are pursuing. But definitely the SDGs, I think, are a broad framing way to look at indicators and sustainability in a broader context.
Okay.
So, I'd like to. So, yeah, this is very common but difficult question to answer. So, as you know, yeah. But so we have many debate. But my position is my personal position is we need to distinguish between smart city and the urban development. So sustainability or SDG, sustainable goal. So smart city cannot accomplish all such goals. What smart city can do is to help each domain to use better and innovative way to achieve their goals. But in many cases, so people want to design smarter city that will accomplish all kinds of goals. But in such cases, so the KPI is quite so how to say distorted. So the KPI is designed based on what smart city cannot to do. So, for instance, eco-friendly and zero. So how to say zero CO2 emissions, such like that. So we need to divide the role between different layer to accomplish the whole goal. But so still many in Korea, even in Korea, many cities want to give very overall and very ambitious goal to smart city. So yeah, that's it.
Right. So I think again, in the interest of time, there are so many questions I wanted to pick up, but just looking at the time, so we are almost at the end. And what I want to request all three of you, maybe same in the order of presentation. So just give a quick 30-second take away for the participants. What you would like them to take away from this discussion today, and how can they reach out to you for connections or maybe, I don't know, some project discussion. So I'll start with Dr. Chen-Yu.
Yes. Okay. Actually, I have a one slide talking about it. What we learned from the project. So I have a few things to give into. I believe you. I believe that you can probably think about it when you try to perform the smart cities. The first one is try to deal with the right issues. I mean, you know, the I have to say the ranking is not so important. You need to deal with the problem and deal with your issues. And the second one is you need to figure out who is your partner. You need to find out your right partners. That's the second thing. And you need to. The third thing is you might need to figure out some of the nice platform that you can work with. There's a lot of international platform, so use them well, and you will get lots of feedback from them.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Chen-Yu. Now let's get here, Randeep, your closing remarks.
Yes, so my closing remark would be to summarize, what was discussed today. I feel that we should follow the approach of thinking ahead, thinking across, and thinking again. One should have humility to think again. So that's my closing sort of takeaway. Think ahead, think across, and think again.
Nice. In fact, even our tagline of the Virtual Thought Leadership series, we call it a reflect, recalibrate, and rebound. So pretty much in line with that, let's reflect what we
Exactly.
want to do, recalibrate the journey, and then rebound quickly and accelerated manner. And last but not the least, Jong-Sung, your comments on
So
the session and today.
I'd like to emphasize the value of definition, value of concept. So balanced understanding is very critical. So if we don't know what we are doing, so we cannot make any plan, we cannot guide our effort to the desirable directions. But as you know, in many cities, there are two leading sectors. One is urban development, the other is digital sectors. These sectors have different perspective. So if you look at find some problem in smart city in some cities, then if you go to the deep inside to find the causes, then the problem you mostly came from who are in charge of that project. So urban development, stress, physical, or some urban development style approach to smart city, digital part. So the use of ICT. So, but we need to define. We need to define what we are doing among stakeholders. Without such consensus, so I think there might be many waste in effort and time and money. That's
Right. Wonderful closing remarks. And as all of you have shared a lot of interesting insights, that these topics, and with that, I would like to thanks one more time to all three of you. It was wonderful sessions. I learned a lot. We couldn't answer all the questions, but I think, like I said, we'll have you again in the future sessions as well. So thank you so much. I'll see you
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Okay.